All right. Well, Happy New Year. Or maybe after today we can call it the Do Year. I know it's cheesy, but it'll make sense in just a few minutes. I promise. Okay, well, I am excited to kick off the new year. This is day one, right? With you guys, the best group of people in the world. Yeah. Day one. So I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. We were off last week, but I hope everybody got to spend time with families and celebrate the greatest gift ever given, Jesus. Uh, so since this is the first day of the year, I'm sure everybody stayed up too late last night, so I'll try to make it quick, keep it brief. Promise to have you out of here by 12:30 or 1. So, so how many did stay up last night? Did anybody? I know those two did. Not not as many as I thought. Well, hey, that's good. Everybody open up to page 1. Just kidding. Okay. Well, did anybody actually watch the ball drop in Times Square or anything like that? Oh, by accident. I was gonna say, do you do it every year? Because I've never really gotten into that. Um, I've never even accidentally watched it, so I don't know what that's like. But I love this perspective of that event, though. This guy, he said, "I love when they drop the ball in Times Square. It's a nice reminder of what I did all year." I thought it was pretty funny. But when it comes to New Year's celebrations, I've never been one to really get into the whole hype as a holiday. When I was a kid, it was just a great excuse to stay up late, right, ladies? Is that y'all? You said you didn't stay up though, huh? There is one thing though that I really do like about the holiday. I love that we celebrate it right after Christmas. We celebrate Christmas at the end of the year, and it kind of becomes the capstone of the year. Um, and then immediately we move into a brand new year. And so that spirit of Christmas just kind of carries us into the beginning of the new year and kicks it off, strong, in my mind. It gives us a high note to start on. It helps us to kind of reset and put God first in our lives for the year. It makes us want to be better this year than the last. And then we set goals and raise expectations and better health or getting out of debt or helping others more or spending time with family more, spending more time with God, on and on and on. One guy, this sounds like something I would do. One guy said that his goal for the new year was to read more. So he turned on the subtitles on his TV. But anyway, this is one thing that I really do like about the New Year as a holiday, though. That being said, I read an article the other day from desiringgod.org, and it was written by a guy named Matt Bradner, and he loves entering the new year. And I like his perspective. It kind of made me think about it a little bit more. But he claims that he can't even fathom entering a new year and viewing it as just another day. And in that article, he had an interesting perspective, and I want to share it with you today, and it's kind of going to be the jump-off point for what we're going to talk about. When the new year comes around, we commonly, or at least I do, commonly think of it as a loop, right? We're starting again, or another trip around the sun. Throw away the old calendar, get out a new one, start over, January, spring, summer, fall, winter, and then we do it again. A new year, new goals, another chance, and we're kind of riding this circle of time, right? But meanwhile, we're also waking up in a place that we have never been before. Think about this year, 2023. It's another tick on the radar. That it's not just another year, though. It's a completely new one. Not just another loop around the sun, but the first day of a moment that has never existed in history. My calendar may be on a loop, but all of history resides on a line when you think about it. A line that began with God creating the universe, bringing order to chaos, that on earth, and creating life. And then the line continues, revealing new, never-before-seen events along the way, and leading up to this moment where we're at right now. And then the line is going to continue along this path beyond this moment to places that we've not seen yet, that haven't been revealed, until its culminating point where God's dwelling place is with man. And there will be no more death, no more sorrow. We can look back at where we've been, right? We can look at history. And God has told us where we're headed. And we have no idea what's going to happen between now and then. For us, what's ahead is like a blank canvas. So when you think about your life and what God is doing in your life, what do you written on the line for 2023? What does God want you to write on your line? Once it's written, think about it like this. Once it's written, it becomes a part of history, right? We are literally, each day that comes, each step we take, we're literally making history with every. So, as cheesy as it sounds, the only way to change history is to change the future or the now. So this kind of all brings up very big questions. In terms of implication, these questions are huge. What does God want for me? How can I change my life? How can I change history? It makes it feel as though it's time to set some big goals, big goals for the New Year's. I can't make changes without being successful at these big goals. And it kind of puts a little bit of pressure on you. But the truth is that that's true. In fact, the opposite is true. When it comes to setting goals, one of the best examples I can think of is in bicycling. Every we take and we ride 100 miles on our bike. If you're Russell, you do it over multiple days. I mean, not the 100 miles, but you do 100 miles multiple times. But anyway, on that day, it's always hot, it's always windy, and it's always just over 100 miles. It's never shorter. The first time that he did this ride every year, I thought he was absolutely insane. 10 miles seemed like too much, especially 100. And at that time, it was insane for me. If I had have jumped on a bike and tried to ride 100 miles, I probably would have died. So what we do every year is we start small. We ride a few miles, a few days per week, and then we gradually increase the mileage until we're ready for the big one. And then every year we have to reset that and start over again with the small. No matter what big destination is on your journey, that truth remains the same in your life. If you're taking notes, this is the takeaway for today, and that's that consistently embracing that which is small will lead to achieving something big. And Jesus regularly taught this truth. In one well-known parable, he even described the kingdom of heaven in this way, using that same principle. In Matthew chapter 13, he gave this illustration. He said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed planted in a field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but it becomes the largest of garden plants. It grows into a tree, and birds come and make nests in its branches." In the very next verse, still talking about the kingdom of heaven, Jesus used another illustration to describe how these things can be small to the point that we don't see them or notice them and notice them working. However, those small things throughout and affect every part of what they touch. In verse 33, he said, Jesus used this illustration. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast a woman used in making bread. Even though she put only a little yeast in 3 measures of flour, which is 60 pounds of flour, it permeated every part of the dough. And today, in today's world, we've kind of trained ourselves to seek instant gratification to the point that we don't even often acknowledge the small progress that leads towards greatness. And we allow these hidden progress to remain hidden. In a world of same-day shipping, on Amazon or whatever, drive-through eateries where you can have your food prepped in 5 minutes, on-demand movies, instant mashed potatoes. We've grown to overlook anything that takes time to achieve victory and embrace the promises that appear to instantly gratify. That type of mentality is exactly what the enemy wants us to be. He wants us to live in that imaginary world in every aspect of our lives, in that imaginary world of comfort and happiness. The same play he made at Jesus, instant gratification. So Jesus, he was hungry and in the wilderness. So Satan think that they were probably Hawaiian rolls because those are really hard to avoid. But in Matthew chapter 4, it says, during that time, when he was in the wilderness, hungry, the devil came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread." Now, Jesus' response to his first temptation is pretty amazing when you think about it, especially in context of what we're talking about today. He could have done any number of things, right? He could have cast Satan out of his presence. He could have hit him with a 2-hour sermon explaining that how actually Jesus is the bread of life, right? Forget hitting him with a sermon. He could have just hit him with a rock, right? I mean, who would deserve being more than Satan? He could have even just ignored him. Instead, what Jesus does is, like I said, amazing. He simply quotes Scripture. In verse 4, Jesus told him, "No, the Scriptures say people do not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." So he was face to face, and he did what he taught others to do. He embraced small steps to victory. One small act. He quoted Scripture. I believe that it is not the big things that have the biggest impact on our lives, but the small things. It's the small things that we either do or do not do that determine our success. So sticking with this theme of rocks for just a second, one of my favorite movie quotes comes from Star Wars Episode 5. And in this specific scene, Yoda was trying to teach Luke to start small by moving around rocks with force. Focusing on the small hidden things, that would permeate through every part of the dough and have an impact on the big things as well. So finally, Yoda tells Luke to move something bigger. But Luke says that it's totally different than moving small stones. But finally, he agrees to try. And that's when Yoda says this quote. He tells him not to just try. He says, "No, try." And I love that quote because of the truth behind it. When it comes to the small things, either do them or we won't. There's no in between. We'll either take small steps to success or we'll take small steps to destruction. And we can see both of these examples throughout Scripture, but specifically I want to look at David's life in the Old Testament. In the 1st and 2nd Samuel, do or do not. So let's start with the latter. Do not. This is a small step to destruction when he does not. At this point in his life, David had victories and everything. Of all victories, this failure stands out at least as much, if not more. And to sum up the failure in one sentence, David hooked up with a married woman, Bathsheba, and then tried to cover it up by giving her husband an assignment on the battlefield that would guarantee his death. When David was setting his goals for that day or that year or whatever, I doubt he decided to kill a woman in town, kill her husband, and then claim her as his own. That path to destruction started with a small decision that David made, a decision to do not. What was that decision? In 2 Samuel chapter 11, it says, "In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem." He decided to send somebody else out to do his job. And it seems like such a small, insignificant decision, right? I mean, maybe he's just trying to delegate. Maybe he's got a lot of other stuff going on. That small decision led him down a path of destruction that would end up destroying an family and murdering somebody just to cover it up. Small decisions lead to great destruction. They also lead to great success. So how do we do? A small step to success. So another one of David's decisions, his small decisions, actually lead him to great success. As you can guess, this time David decided to do. So if we back up, this happened much earlier in his life, and this is one of his most famous victories. If you talk about David, this is probably the first thing you think of. It's the time when he defeated Goliath. If this event was turned into a movie, in the last 5 years, the opening scene would be a close-up of David's eyes as he's squinting in the sunlight. And then the next shot would be from behind Goliath as he laughs and smashes, showing David in the background looking up at Goliath, fearlessly staring him down. But what brought David to that moment? How did he get here? How did this boy face to face with this man that was over 9 feet tall? So just as David didn't wake up and decide, hey, I'm going to family today, he also didn't wake up when he was a boy and decide to be Israel's hero. He didn't decide to give it a try, as Luke would probably say, and just see what would happen. As a result of the small decisions that he made, decisions to do. Every day prior to that moment, he went to work taking care of his father's sheep and goats. And what he would do is he would protect them from predators, and that would grow in him and develop hidden strengths and abilities and confidence. He had faith in him from consistently spending time with him and trusting him. And on this specific day, he didn't go to the battlefield seeking victory and fame. His dad asked him to take food to his brother captain, just such a menial task. David simply said yes. And that's in 1 Samuel chapter 17. One day, Jesse said to David, take this this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers and give these 10 cubes of cheese to their captains. Captain, see how your brothers are getting along and bring back a report on how they're doing. So he's just the delivery guy, sandwich delivery. Think about that from David's perspective, though, for just a second. At this point in his life, when he's going to do this, he knew future king. Samuel the prophet had already come to him by God's leading and anointed him as the future king. David could have made the decision that day to stay away from the battlefield to protect himself because he was Israel's investment, right? He might have even preferred to fight in the battle and be this warrior hero. He even just simply thought that delivering MREs to his brothers was beneath him. But instead, I imagine that he carried himself with honor as he made this small decision, embracing this seemingly significant act of service. This small decision that would lead to great success. So, as we kick off this new year, 2023, this brand new moment that is never I would encourage you to make small decisions too. Don't get bogged down with the big things like Luke did in Star Wars. These big things that you need to change in your life and try to set big goals and all that. There may be a whole bunch of things in your life that need to be moved, but you can't move them by trying. Yoda, no difference between the big and the small things. The only difference, he had to unlearn what he had learned. And even though that's kind of weird to think about, in a sense he was right. When we focus on the small things. The small decisions are what have the power to permeate the big obstacles. And just like the yeast. So, the dough, I should say. So as you set goals and make plans for this new year, start small. Come up with one small decision that you can do consistently. And if that sounds too easy, come up with 2 or 3. And then write them down somewhere as a reminder. That's what I have to do. Find a marker and write devotion on the bathroom mirror so that every morning when you see it, it'll remind